Hello world, this is Lisa Friedrichsen, your friend and professor from Johnson County Community College. And in this short screencast, we're going to finish our Web 110 objective series and talk about what you would need to show mastery in each course objective. And we are already on the last course objective, responsive web design. And in our outline for Web 110, it has 5 sub-areas: define the goals and techniques of responsive web design, describe and apply flexible units of measurement for fonts and layouts, flexible images using CSS, media queries in CSS, and appropriate HTML meta tags. So first of all, I want you to be able to describe the goals of responsive web design. And basically, responsive web design means that we're building one set of files that respond appropriately and make the website easy to read and work with at any size viewport. And you can see that as I'm changing the viewport and simulating what a tablet and phone size device viewport might look like, you can see the website respond and change so that the information on the website is still relatively easy to read. And so that is the goal of responsive web design. One set of web files that responds well to whatever device or size of viewport is viewing them. And just as in the outline, there are 4 basic tenets of responsive web design. The responsive web design really starts with the style sheet. And before you even worry about media queries, you can make your style sheet much more flexible and responsive by using flexible, responsive units of measure. And there are many units of measure that can be used, but a good place to start is to use M's for textual measurements and line height, and percentages for column width. Now in this case, I'm using a percentage for a textual element, font size, which is fine. The flexible measurements can be mixed and matched. You can use percentages throughout your style sheet, or you can use M's, but those 2 units of measure form the basics of having flexible, responsive units of measure that will respond to the browser and the size of the viewport. When we start seeing large pixel measurements, they are a more fixed measurement that will not respond as well to various size viewports. So in my final project, I don't like to see large pixel measurements above, say, 10 pixels. 1, 2, 3 little border pixel measurements are fine, because that's not really going to impact and look a lot different and take up a lot of space depending upon the viewport. But if you just start with M's for text and percentages for column widths, you're in pretty good shape to build a responsive web page. The second part is flexible images. And flexible images are created with style that is just this simple: max width of 100%. And how that plays out on the web page is that no matter how large the website gets, that image will not get bigger than 100%. In other words, it won't pixelate at large screen sizes. But by measuring it as a percentage, look what happens to that image as I resize the browser. See how it's responding to the size of the viewport? So the 100 makes sure that it doesn't grow beyond 100%, and the percentage makes it flexible. So that's a second tenet of responsive web design, is having responsive images on your website. A third item is to create media queries in CSS. I'm going to come back to that and do the easy one first. Insert appropriate HTML meta tags for responsive web design. In your HTML, you're going to want to have this meta tag at the top in your head section of every web page. This viewport meta tag will set the initial device width to the appropriate media query, no matter if you pull this web page up in a phone or a tablet or a big screen. So if you doubt the value of this meta tag, just comment it out sometime and pull up your website after it's done with the media queries on a phone, and then put the meta tag back into the page and pull it up in a phone, and you'll see the immediate difference, that you will not need to pinch and drag to enact the media query in a phone, provided you have this nice tag at the top of your web page in the head section. That's what letter E is all about. And finally, I'm going to go back to create media queries. You're going to want to know how to create a media query, what the selector looks like, and how to put all your declarations inside these curly braces. So the media query starts with the @ sign, and in this case, we're talking about only the screen media as well as the size. We want these styles to apply anytime the max width is less than 64 ems, which is going to be about 2/3 the size of your screen size. And then we apply these styles. So this would be a tablet size media query. And here's our selector for a phone size media query. These styles will be applied anytime the max width of the screen does not go beyond 37.5 ems. Oftentimes people think that media queries are responsive web design, and certainly they're a huge part of responsive web design. Let's look at JCCC's website. The screen will not change unless there are media queries deployed. So here we're seeing a very nice example of flexible images and then a media query that kicks in at this point in time. But without flexible measurements, without flexible images, and without the meta viewport tag in the HTML, our media queries would not, in and of themselves, create a responsive website. They're just one important piece of responsive web design. So that's it for the objectives for Web 110. Hopefully this has given you an idea of where we end up after we study a course objective and what would be required for each course objective. Of course, many items make up every course objective and represent many hours of study. So when you watch these YouTubes, if I use terminology or I demonstrate a technique that you're not quite familiar with, go back and look at the incremental YouTubes that I've created for each of these subject areas. Thank you.